A shadow of conflict stretches across the Middle East, capturing the world's attention. The nations of Iran and Israel are locked in a dangerous standoff, a long-simmering dispute that has now reached a critical point. Governments and international organizations across the globe are holding urgent discussions. The reason for this intense focus is clear and deeply unsettling. The very real possibility that this conflict could escalate into a nuclear exchange. This is not just a regional problem. The consequences of such a war would ripple outwards, touching every corner of the planet and fundamentally changing the world as we know it. The date, June 13, 2025, is now seen by some analysts as a potential turning point, a moment after which our global reality could be irrevocably altered by these events. The tension between these two powerful nations is a dominant issue on the international stage. It is a story unfolding in real time, with each development closely monitored by world leaders and military strategists. The stakes are incredibly high, involving not just regional stability, but global security. The fear is that a single miscalculation, a single aggressive act too far, could ignite a chain reaction with catastrophic consequences. The world holds its breath, watching the diplomatic maneuvers, the military posturing, and the heated rhetoric. This is more than just another conflict. It represents a potential flashpoint that could redefine international relations and security for generations to come, making it a matter of urgent concern for everyone everywhere. What makes this situation particularly alarming is the nuclear dimension. When nations with nuclear capabilities, or those on the verge of obtaining them, enter into direct conflict, the entire framework of global safety is threatened. The standoff between Iran and Israel brings this terrifying possibility to the forefront of international concern. The language being used by both sides has become increasingly stark, and the actions taken have grown more audacious. This escalation has created a volatile environment where the long-held taboo against the use of nuclear weapons feels increasingly fragile. The world is therefore forced to confront a question it has long hoped to avoid. What happens when the deterrent fails? The global community finds itself in a precarious position, caught between two determined adversaries. International bodies like the United Nations are working to de-escalate the situation, but their influence is limited when core national security interests are at stake. Alliances are being tested as nations are pressured to choose sides or risk being drawn into the fray. The economic implications are also immense, with the potential for massive disruption to global energy markets and trade routes. Because of these interconnected risks, the Iran-Israel conflict has become a central focus of global policy, a complex and dangerous puzzle that world leaders are desperately trying to solve before it's too late. To understand the depth of the hostility between Iran and Israel, one must look beyond simple territorial disputes. This is not a conflict over a shared border. At its heart, this is a profound ideological clash. For decades, since its 1979 revolution, Iran's leadership has refused to recognize the state of Israel's right to exist. This is a fundamental part of its state ideology. Leaders in Iran have frequently used powerful rhetoric, expressing a desire to see Israel wiped off the map. This is not just political posturing, it is a deeply held conviction that shapes Iran's foreign policy. and its support for various proxy groups across the region, such as Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Houthis in Yemen, who share this animosity toward Israel. On the other side, Israel views Iran as an existential threat. For Israeli leaders, Iran's rhetoric is not just words, but a declaration of intent to destroy their nation and its people. This perception is amplified by Iran's actions, including its funding of militant groups that have launched attacks on Israel and its persistent pursuit of advanced military technology. Israel, a nation born from the ashes of the Holocaust, has a foundational security doctrine centered on self-defense and preventing any single threat from endangering its existence. This deep-seated fear and commitment to survival mean that Israel is determined to take any action it deems necessary to protect itself from what it sees as a genocidal adversary. This ideological war is now dangerously intertwined with the issue of nuclear weapons. Israel is widely believed to have possessed a nuclear arsenal for decades, although it maintains a policy of official ambiguity, neither confirming nor denying its existence. This capability has long served as the ultimate deterrent, a guarantee of its security in a hostile neighborhood. However, the prospect of Iran also obtaining nuclear weapons completely changes this strategic calculation. For Israel, a nuclear-armed Iran is an unacceptable outcome. It believes that an Iranian bomb would not be for deterrence, but for aggression, directly threatening Israel's survival and triggering a terrifying arms race across the Middle East. Iran's perspective on nuclear capability is framed differently. Following recent unprecedented strikes on its soil, Iran views the pursuit of nuclear weapons as a necessary means of self-defense. It sees a world where its adversaries possess the ultimate weapon, and it feels vulnerable without one of its own. High-ranking officials and lawmakers in Iran have begun to openly question its commitment to the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, suggesting a potential withdrawal. For them, a nuclear weapon is the only sure way to deter an attack from Israel or its powerful allies, leveling the playing field and ensuring the survival of the Iranian regime against external threats. The international community watches with great concern as Iran moves closer to the ability to create a nuclear weapon. There are several potential pathways Iran could take to achieve this goal, each with its own timeline and set of geopolitical risks. The most direct route would be through domestic development. For years, Iran has been enriching uranium, and while it has maintained that its program is for peaceful energy purposes, the level of enrichment has approached weapons grade. Despite potential setbacks from Israeli strikes aimed at damaging its nuclear facilities, this path remains a long-term viable option. It represents a determined state-driven effort to master the complete nuclear fuel cycle on its own terms. A second, and perhaps faster route, involves acquisition from another nuclear state. North Korea stands out as a possible partner. The two countries have a history of military and missile technology cooperation. It is a hypothetical but plausible scenario that Iran could request tactical nuclear warheads from Pyongyang. North Korea, isolated and in constant need of cash, might see a strategic advantage in such a deal. Furthermore, this transfer could be quietly supported by larger powers. Russia, now a close strategic partner to Iran, has its own strained relationship with the West and might choose not to condemn such a transaction. further complicating the international response and increasing regional instability. A third, more speculative scenario involves the acquisition of a nuclear device from Russia itself. While considered less likely, it is not entirely outside the realm of possibility given the shifting global alliances. Russia and Iran signed a significant defense and military cooperation agreement in 2025, deepening their strategic partnership. In a high-stakes geopolitical chess game, Russia might see an advantage in allowing Iran to use a Russian-made device. This could allow Moscow to observe the effects of a limited nuclear conflict and challenge the United States' influence without being directly implicated, creating a layer of plausible deniability while fundamentally altering the balance of power in the Middle East. Each of these pathways presents a grave threat to global peace and security. Israel has made it clear that it will do everything in its power to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon, including preemptive military action. This sets the stage for a direct and potentially devastating confrontation. The international non-proliferation regime, already under strain, could collapse entirely if Iran succeeds. The world is therefore faced with the urgent task of preventing any of these scenarios from materializing, using a combination of diplomacy, sanctions, and deterrence to navigate this perilous nuclear tightrope and avert a catastrophic outcome. The consequences of a nuclear conflict between Iran and Israel would be catastrophic, extending far beyond the immediate devastation. The very existence of one or both nations could be at stake. A nuclear exchange would not only cause immense loss of life, but could also render vast territories uninhabitable, destroying infrastructure, economies, and political systems. The countries as we know them today could effectively cease to exist. This would create a power vacuum in the Middle East of unprecedented scale, leading to widespread chaos, humanitarian crises, and a complete redrawing of the regional map. This is the stark reality that makes the current tensions so profoundly dangerous for the entire world. A war of this magnitude would also trigger a global arms race, unlike any seen before. The moment a nuclear weapon is used in anger, the principle of deterrence that has held for over 75 years would be shattered. Nations around the world, seeing that nuclear weapons are now a tool of active warfare, would rush to acquire their own. Countries like Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Egypt would almost certainly pursue nuclear capabilities to counter a new regional reality. This proliferation would not be limited to the Middle East. Major economic and military powers globally would feel compelled to expand and modernize their arsenals, leading to a new, far more dangerous Cold War fought on multiple fronts. This new era of proliferation would inevitably lead to a sharp increase in brutal armed conflicts worldwide. With the nuclear taboo broken, nations might become more willing to use overwhelming military force to achieve their objectives, believing that might is the only thing that guarantees right. The established norms of international law and diplomacy would erode, replaced by a raw and unforgiving struggle for power and survival. Smaller conflicts could escalate more quickly, as nations might be tempted to use tactical nuclear weapons to gain an advantage. The world would become a much more violent and unpredictable place, where the threat of war looms constantly over every international dispute. Ultimately, the outcome of the Iran-Israel conflict has the power to change the world for everyone. The alliances that currently define global politics would be shattered and reformed. The United States and its European allies firmly support Israel, while Russia has become a key strategic partner for Iran. A war would force every nation to navigate this new landscape. The global economy would face shocks from which it might never recover. Our collective future would be defined by fear, instability, and the constant threat of nuclear annihilation. The world that would emerge from such a conflict would be a darker, more dangerous place, a stark reminder of what is at stake in the deserts of the Middle East.